Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Monday, May 29th, 2017. It is Memorial Day, Monday. So for those of you enjoying a 3-day weekend or a little bit of remembrance of our country's veterans and fallen, well, welcome to the show this morning. We were going to do, as you might have recalled from Friday's show, I was thinking about pre-recording today's show. I want to assure you that that is not happening. And I gave some thought to that. I even started the show. I should probably just roll that for a while, and then I should kick back and have some breakfast. Everybody's at home today, of course, so a little bit of extra background noise. Nothing we can do about that. Might even add to the ambiance of the show. The kids getting ready to head out for their scouting event, of course. Their traditional Memorial Day Monday morning, not a sleep-in affair, but showing up at the local war memorial and helping set up the morning's ceremony and assisting everybody to their seats and providing water bottles and shade and even a flag ceremony and occasionally a band to play all our patriotic music. Sometimes the high school kids get together and put together a small brass band for this nice event. I'll be here reporting on it live. I won't really know what's going on over there. But I assume flags going up, salutes being given. Everybody loves having the scouts around. So a little bit of breakfast clacking and clanging going on in the background. Nothing we can do about that. The noise, the real noise, it's all a distraction. Don't get distracted from the main story, which is possibly Russia, possibly treason, possibly impeachment, possibly NATO, possibly the dissolution of NATO. The seating of the traditional title, in the last couple decades anyway, of leader of the free world being bestowed on the President of the United States. That now apparently being inherited, I would guess, most people are saying anyway, the Chancellor of Germany. Not a bad choice, Angela Merkel. And too bad about that whole leadership of the free world thing. Trump not interested in maintaining that title. Happy to cede it, I guess, although I'm sure he'll continue to claim that it belongs with him. Let's see. Other chaos in the area. We survived the senior PGA Tour. Was it the Players Championship? I don't know. All I know is KitchenAid apparently sponsored it. The corporate sponsorships in the name of any sporting event, always kind of weird. KitchenAid, not really what would you think would have been chosen for the Trump event? Like, the truck nuts maybe, something like that. But instead it was KitchenAid. Fantastic products, I'm sure. Didn't even really disrupt traffic too bad around here, which is nice. Trump did not make it to the golf course yesterday. This is sort of a dumb story. In the face of everything else that's going on, the dumbest, least consequential story of all. But Trump finally had, from me, from my wife, we just, chatting about these things. He finally had a good excuse, I thought, to go to his golf course for once. He's, of course, back from his trip. He arrived back on Saturday. Worst scheduling ever by Jared Kushner, by the way, who will pay for it, no doubt, and is paying for it right now. We're going to talk about Jared Kushner a little bit today. But anyway, he didn't go to the golf course yesterday. Would have been a great day to go because, of course, it was the finishing Sunday of the big PGA Tour event, or senior tour event anyway, which is perfect for him, at his own golf course. And he even loaded up the press in vans getting ready for a drive out there. The press, of course, asking, is the president going to play golf? They have two courses at this club, and so I guess it was theoretically possible for him to play golf even while the PGA Tour event was going on. But no, he said he was going for meetings as usual, the usual lie. And then, of course, they never left the White House. It began to rain, drizzle, really. There wasn't much in the way of rain. And they unloaded the vans. Everybody back out. It's rain. We're canceling the trip. We're not going. And, of course, people were puzzled. I thought you were having meetings. Yeah, well, apparently meeting with the Wicked Witch of the West, and she couldn't make it. The rain was going to ruin the trip. So, anyway, he turned around, he went back, and so for the first time in weeks that he hasn't been abroad, he hasn't gone to one of his properties, which is pretty amazing. And instead there were some kind of crazy red flashing lights in the residence of the building. I still haven't found out what that is about. Hopefully Greg Dworkin knows. He's been rounding up the news. I've just been cleaning up the yard and getting ready for the kids to go to their event. Good morning, Greg. How you doing? Oh, I don't hear you.
We're here. I was just closing the door to the studio so the washing machine didn't interrupt us because we're like a totally professional organization here. I'm pretty sure that Trump is really mad at the press because of all these stories about the red lights flashing, through the White House residence window. I mean, the guy can't sit down and play Diablo 3 without everybody looking at him and just commenting on it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm not certain what that was, but it wasn't a fire alarm, I guess. Because
no, it was just a red light that was a red light flashing on and off. I've seen orb malfunction as one of the discussion points as to what that was. But I think he was just playing video games because I think that's all he does.
Does he play video games? I wouldn't even think he could really do that. You have to have longer fingers than that, I think. Maybe not.
I don't know that he's very good at it, but then again, I don't know that he's very good at anything.
The red flashing lights, I guess.
There's a tremendous amount happening here for the special Memorial Day live show.
Yes.
But there's just so much news, you can't not comment on it. So I wanted to start. I do have the abbreviated pundit roundup up. It's a little bit late because it's a holiday. We generally post at 9 o'clock on holidays.
Everybody's got to cut you a break for that.
Yeah, I got it up a little early so that listeners and readers can look at it. And I have an interesting juxtaposition of pieces. This one was Donald Trump is destroying his own presidency. Trump has no one to blame for his endangered presidency but himself. And it's by Ezra Klein, and it's a week old.
Oh.
And so much has happened since that. It's just really amazing.
I couldn't even tape on Friday. It went crazy.
So Trump has no one to blame for his endangered presidency but himself because basically talks about the Comey firing.
Yeah.
Trump asking Comey to stop investigating Flynn. Then the Oval Office meeting with Kislyak and Lavrov that Trump himself had. And the whole sense that Trump was asking Comey, as Klein puts it, to collude with him in obstructing justice, thus giving Comey the ammunition to torch Trump if he was ever crossed.
Yeah.
Then Trump publicly fired and humiliated Comey. Then he publicly admitted he did it to quash the Russia investigation, which in turn primed the public to believe Comey when he said Trump also asked him to end the Flynn investigation. Then he bragged about it to Russian officials because, I don't know. And then that was last week. And then since then, it turns out that Jared Kushner has back channels.
Yeah, he's a spy.
To the Russians, and it turns out he's a spy. I have this piece here from Foreign Policy. Jared Kushner's growing stench of treason.
Stench. All right,
Nobody knows yet whether the president's son-in-law broke any laws, but traitor is more than just a legal term. And the article starts out, instead of talking about game theory here, it's time to talk about treason.
Oh.
We now know, according to U.S. officials briefed on intelligence reports cited by the Washington Post, that in early December 2016, Jared Kushner and Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak discussed the possibility of setting up a secret and secure communications channel between Trump's transition team and the Kremlin using Russian diplomatic facilities in an apparent move to shield the pre-inauguration discussion from monitoring.
Spying.
And the weird thing is the New York Times had a follow-up piece claiming that, the whole reason they did that is they wanted to talk about Syria. And then the Washington Post, which had originally broke the story, said, hey, we had those same discussions with people off the record claiming this was about Syria. But you know what? They were Kushner people. And we, the Washington Post, said to them, we are not putting that in the paper unless you want to go on the record as to who you are. So it'll be clear to our readers that this is Kushner's spin. They refused to go on the record. We refused to publish it. But the Times had no such compunction, and they went ahead and put it out there, and it read like something of a whitewash, which I'm just going to do a little variation here on that.
Okay.
And one of the reasons that I'm so annoyed at that is that there happens to be a New York Times piece up today. I mean, yeah, they have Kushner's role in White House tested as Russia case grows. But right underneath that, they have Melania Trump shows her star power.
What? When?
Yeah, exactly. What, when? A coming out party for Mrs. Trump as she travels with the president. I mean, you know what that trip went. The whole trip was a disaster. She refused to touch him.
That was a win for her, but is that what they mean?
You know, and there were articles about her clothing, wearing it like armor. Oh. In fact, even the Times had one. First lady on display, dressed in ambivalence and armor. And you know, it's a fluff piece. And the Times continues to do that. But that whenever, you know, and you know, none of us can forget that right before the election, the Times published a piece saying FBI says that there's no link to Trump and Russia.
Yes.
I mean, outrageous stuff. So I have this piece here from James Fallows, which I put in Storify.
Oh, okay. Let me get that.
And do you have that one? It's in the list.
Yeah, I've got things. Buttons,
things.
press.
All right, let me just put it right at the bottom and make it easy for you to find. Because it does start.
It was very easy. It was at the top, but now I got it at the bottom. Okay.
It's at the top and the bottom. Investigating Donald Trump, FBI sees no clear link to Russia, and the date was late October on that. And Fallows says somehow this comes back to mind. Fleshing out the New York Times point from earlier. New York Times, our greatest news organization. I read print edition every day and have for decades, and I have to say I do too. It's my local paper. New York Times' breadth of coverage is unmatched. Get arts, tech, science, biz in a way no other U.S. manages, plus world U.S. news, of course. And I would add, of course, those wonderful stories about the ultra-rich and how difficult it is for them to find, you know...
Good help these days?
Good help and good falafel and you know, how difficult it is to start their own clothing line in just a week and a half
hot
with Daddy's help, you know, that kind of thing.
Too hot.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Anyway, if I could, I'd spend many hours each Sunday on all the parts of the paper, review books, magazine, and so on. But in retrospect, two odd items in its very influential handling of the 2016 campaign. One was ongoing, hyper-serious HRC email, and the other was the prominent, specific batting down of Trump-Russia story 8 days before the election. Again, the headline was, Investigating Donald Trump, FBI sees no clear link to Russia, which is laughable now. Did all of this make a difference in an election like this? Who knows? And we all make mistakes. I declared in summer 2015 that Trump couldn't win, and I was wrong. I did the same thing, personally. I didn't think he could win. I didn't expect to call me. New York Times coverage of emails and of Trump-Russia seems worthy of the kind of honest what happened inquiry it did after Iraq WMD reports.
Wow.
That is all I'm suggesting, that our leading news organization wrestles seriously and in public with the question of why it covered these issues the way it did. And by the way, CNN could do the same thing, wouldn't hurt. Just a matter of asking it to apply its own demanding standards and learn from its past cycle. Oh, that's why CNN doesn't do it. They don't have demanding standards. They hire Jeffrey Lord. No believe that Sullivan would have done that if she were still the public editor.
No.
Bonus points. The Washington Post doesn't aspire to the breadth of New York Times, but obviously in golden age of campaign politics coverage. And regrets to any of my friends, many, many friends at the New York Times I've miffed. It's a great institution that I hope will wrestle with the 2016 question. And here's an illustration of a strong pre-Sullivan New York Times public editor asking what went wrong. And it's Dean Okrent asking about the weapons of mass destruction issue.
Yeah, what did go wrong?
He's not Armando's favorite of the public editors, and perhaps he's not, but it's a good illustration of how you could do it. I happen to like Sullivan. I think she's terrific, but that's besides the point. It is amazing, even now, to watch the press attempt as best as they can to try to normalize Trump, and that's true in this disastrous trip that he took. Some examples here. This is Washington Post. Following Trump's trip, Merkel says Europe can't rely on others. Angela Merkel. She means U.S. We have from Ann Applebaum for the U.S.-European alliance, everything has changed. And she basically says, you can't trust the U.S. anymore. Richard Engel, a profound headline, Merkel, Europe can no longer rely on allies after Trump and Brexit. And she's the leader of the free world now, unfortunately, because we've abdicated. We have in Monkey Cage blog, thanks to Trump, Germany says it can't rely on the U.S. What does it mean? And it means a tremendous amount. And then here's one in the Washington Post. Trump returns home from abroad with a Twitter rant about fake news leaks and the enemy. And that's why that Jared Kushner's growing stench of treason one is so interesting. But that's not even the read of the day.
Oh.
The read of the day, I think, comes from Molly Ball, the excellent Molly Ball, who's writing in The Atlantic.
Okay.
How Trump is torturing Capitol Hill.
Huh.
This one is really worth looking at. As Republicans in Congress try to fend off the flurry of scandals, they're haunted by a question, is this as good as it's going to get?
Okay.
And I have a little excerpt of that at the very bottom,
Yeah, I see
the
it.
second to last piece there. The Speaker of the House strode to his lectern on a recent Thursday to confront another totally normal day on Capitol Hill. Ho-hum, ordinary day. Healthcare, tax reform, a president under investigation, rumblings of impeachment. Morning, everybody. Paul Ryan chirped, busy week. I mean, it's like watching Pee Wee Herman do Congress, right? It was indeed. Less than a day had passed since the appointment of a special prosecutor to investigate Russia's involvement in the presidential campaign, just a few hours since Trump angrily tweeted that the investigation was the single greatest witch hunt of a politician in American history. Like he forgot about the birther stuff from Kenya that he...
Oh, yeah, right. But that was something else.
And only minutes since the Russia-linked former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn had begun defying congressional subpoenas. A few days prior, the president had been accused of revealing sensitive intelligence information to the Russian foreign minister. Yes. As Ryan earnestly touted his party's work on landmark federal IT reform legislation.
What?
That'll get you going in the morning, right? There was a grim, haunted look in his bright blue eyes, and it wasn't hard to imagine why. What ought to have been the salad days of Republican-led government had instead become a ceaseless, disorienting swirl of scandal, 120 days of self-inflicted chaos and crisis.
Chaos.
Oh, I love that word, chaos. It is so descriptive.
Salad gets a lot of play, too.
You know, we should have copyrighted it when we put chaos up there, because that's the only way to describe this administration. So here's some, Ryan talking about this and that. Meanwhile, Democrats sit back and watch it burn with no small amount of schadenfreude. And the Russians, sorry, that's a Freudian slip. It's easy to make because you can't tell one from the other. The Republicans who never liked Trump see their worst predictions fulfilled. You brought this bad pony, you ride it, the anti-Trump consultant Rick Wilson tweeted recently.
Huh.
A staffer to a Senate Republican who did not vote for Trump told me, we didn't have high expectations, so we're not disappointed. We tried to warn you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you tried to warn me.
You tried to warn us. Yeah, right. Sure.
Thanks for your help.
Okay. For the Republicans running the government, Capitol Hill has become a workplace with extremely poor morale. Kind of like the State Department, huh? Or maybe the EPA. The moderates fear for their careers, while the conservative true believers see little to hope for. When the liberal magazine Mother Jones credited Representative Justin Amash of Michigan with being the first Republican to raise the possibility of impeachment, the office of Representative Carlos Curbelo of Florida called to request the correction. Curbelo had gone there first.
Me first, okay.
Okay, when you're correcting each other on that, you know you're in trouble. But for the most part, his party has not openly turned on Trump. What would be the point? Behind closed doors, a longtime House Republican staffer told me a few lawmakers still wholeheartedly defend the president. Among the rest, there are differing degrees of fatalism. One group thinks it's possible to fight through the crisis, and others resign to a long, slow death, as this staffer put it, potentially culminating in a Democratic-controlled House beginning impeachment proceedings in 2019. This is like Reservoir Dogs, the staffer said. Everybody ends up dead on the floor. That's pretty amazing.
Yes.
All right. And here's senators crossing the microphone gauntlet. Just some great quotes in here. Crossing the microphone gauntlet as they trickled out of the Rosenstein briefing. That's Rod Rosenstein, who was briefing them from Justice about the Comey firing and the probe of Russian involvement and collusion.
Right.
Lindsey Graham, the jocular Trump-skeptical South Carolinian, was asked about the president's statement that the special counsel hurts our country terribly. Well, he's entitled to his opinion, Graham said. If I were the president, I'd focus on defending the nation and trying to get his legislative agenda through Congress.
Yeah, well.
But that's not happening.
Hasn't got a legislative.
Mounting evidence of obstruction of justice, said Richard Blumenthal, that's our guy from Connecticut. The special counsel must pursue all the evidence. And Marco Rubio was asked whether the Rosenstein briefing had made him more or less comfortable with the events of the week. I don't know if it's a level of comfort, he said. I think it's a level of the fact that we're a nation of laws and we have institutions, and irrespective of people's political views, those laws and those rules are going to be followed. As Rubio walked away from the microphone, I, Molly Ball, asked him if he thought Trump's presidency was in crisis. He blinked and mumbled, not at this point, and then ran away.
Yeah, it's this point.
Yeah. So it's not getting any better. And now with Kushner in the spotlight, people are talking about a diminished role, but he's the one that's actually been the president. People laugh about the fact that he has this huge agenda, but between he and Bannon, Trump isn't capable of making decisions or doing any of this.
Yeah, unemployment goes to 90% if he gets fired.
Exactly. At least, in terms of family members.
Yes. Well, none of the rest of them are doing anything. That's for sure.
Right. And at the same time, he has growing questions about his own real estate ventures. I mean, I saw one story in I think it was in Bloomberg, and I had it on Saturday in the pundit roundup there, about his 666, what was it, Park Avenue?
Fifth Avenue, I believe.
Fifth Avenue, 666 Fifth Avenue.
Right. Should have bought it on 6th, but he didn't.
Which is a great number, of course. It's
the number on the lease.
It's in debt. He owes payments on it. It's in the billions. And for some reason, this brilliant young real estate entrepreneur signed a pay me the money because I need to keep it going loan shark kind of deal with balloon payments.
Yeah.
So at the end of this payment period, if things are fine until the last couple of years, in which case things start doubling and tripling. So if it's $1 billion now, it's $2 billion next time, and then $3 billion or whatever. And he doesn't have the money. And the implication is that if he was talking to the Russians, it wasn't about Syria.
Yeah, I mean,
it was about getting rid of sanctions so that Russian banks could better fund the Trump business empire, the Trump family business empire,
and
including Kushner family.
And it struck me over the weekend, and when we were talking about this, and one, the idea of Syria being rather ridiculous, but two, just trying to remember that all the fabulous, classic Cold War spy case stuff. Very rarely did anybody ever, decide, anyone who was caught anyway, decide to engage in espionage for the Soviets because they were committed communists. It was usually just somebody who was in desperate financial straits for one reason or another and just needed cash or something of value from anyone who could provide it. And they wasn't that they were dedicated ideologues. It's just, I need money. And this fits the bill.
Right. So you have personal aggrandizement, personal financing, so you could at least understand why they are doing.
Right.
But at the same time, again, going back to Molly Ball, she concludes her piece with this great quote. You finally have a united Republican government, and this is as good as it gets. Why bother?
Yeah.
This is a GOP lobbyist speaking. I mean, if that's all you're going to get out of it, what's the point? The point is so that Kushner and Trump can get rich. They didn't do this in terms of the United States. And at the same time, this is such a disaster of a trip. Again, watching some people in the media trying to prop up Trump. Well, he did great in the Middle East.
Didn't vomit.
No, he didn't. He got feted by authoritarians who he's very comfortable with. And that's not a success in any way, shape, or form. There's no policy that came out of this except for more arms sales to Saudi Arabia so that they could bomb Yemen. I don't see how that helps. And then he goes to Europe, which is a complete disaster, and they still try to write the trip off as, he had his first successful overseas trip. No, he didn't. It wasn't a success at all. And he comes back to a complete disaster, finding out that half the people on his entourage had to be sent home early because the FBI needed to question him about what's going on.
Yeah,
which is true. Good. I mean, they had to leave early.
Yeah.
So Jared didn't have to worry about coming back on a Saturday. He was already back here.
Is that what happened? Okay, I didn't realize he was also back early. Yeah.
Well, the FBI wanted to have a few words with him about a thing or two.
Just as well, because traveling on a Saturday, you got to talk to the rabbi again, and who knows, this mystery rabbi that nobody.
Yeah, apparently his regular rabbi didn't give him permission for this.
Nobody did, and I think they made that up. But What can you do? It's not a huge deal. It's just an indication of the sort of thing he'll lie about. I mean, the central tenet of my life, my faith, my life. I'm an observant Orthodox Jew. I'll only, I won't travel on the Sabbath unless I do. In which case, a mystery rabbi who won't reveal himself to you, told me it was okay, but I can't tell you what his name is. It sounds like nonsense, and I don't know. Maybe one day they'll turn up an identity, but very strange. Okay, so he was back already. I was wondering about that because I didn't see any. Usually, you'll see some fanfare about the arrival home, but Trump. The timing was difficult, but he arrived back at the White House at night. It was dark, so there wasn't a television event of Marine One landing on the lawn or anything. It was very quiet return for such a triumphal visit abroad, I must say. It was
he doesn't want access. There's already talk that one of the first things he's going to do when he gets back, because the entire fate of the free world depends on it, is to fire Sean Spicer and put Sarah Huckabee in that position and then cancel all of the daily briefings.
I'd say you might as well put me in that position. I'll also not show up to do it.
Exactly. And so while all this is going on, Sunday Review in the New York Times has a very timely piece that we really want Mike Pence to be president, going through everything that he's bad at, which is a lot. And recounting his history in Indiana with the LGBT laws and other things that got him in trouble, and pointing out that he's really not that bright.
No, but... Well, I don't know. I'm tired of the question, too, right? But do you want Pence to be president? No, I don't want him to be president, but so what? That's not even the issue.
Those are the same questions that came up during the Nixon era. Yeah. That's not the point. Deal with the president first.
Yeah, right. Do you want grape nuts for breakfast? No, but it's all we have. Either don't eat or eat the grape nuts.
Right. Anyway, I recommend that Molly Ball piece to people, and hopefully it'll be up in the roundup of the show later. Now, here's one from The Hill, former NATO envoy. This seems to be the end of an era. This is like bad stuff happening.
Yeah.
And, I do think that it's well worthwhile paying attention to, and this is no way, shape, or form a successful trip, and therefore, media, don't prop up this putz and stop trying to make it sound like he's more competent than he is. This has been a disaster right as such. Start using the treason word, and treason word is going to come before the impeachment word, because impeachment isn't practical until January 2019. But then...
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, they might as well start using it because it makes impeachment that much more palatable. We were all worried about the gasp factor, or that we don't have the votes, or don't put it on the table, or wait until after the election. All those things that we're used to with impeachment. But I guess if treason is on the table, you say, well, it's a capital crime. We might get executed. Maybe we should start talking about handling this in a less...
A little more serious way, huh?
Measures, right. I mean, I spent some time in D.C. over the weekend for the first time in a long time.
Yeah.
And we were downtown, just blocks.
You went there to feel out the pulse of people who live in D.C.?
Right. So what I did was I went to the bar at the St. Regis Hotel to talk to people after they were done changing their oil filters.
Mm-hmm.
And just watching the televisions, they had one. Oh, this was interesting, too. There was no Fox News on the TVs at the bar. They had a bunch of TVs. They had MSNBC and CNN on. And, so there were chyrons with treason in them, which is pretty amazing, and discussing Jared Kushner mostly, which was pretty interesting. And the fact that he was I'm hiring the best lawyers, and I hired this one and I hired that one, and people on the TV pointing out, the guy has he's lawyered up, and he's gone and gotten himself the best real estate lawyer around. And it's like, you're not in a real estate problem here, man. This is if you're going to bring up the treason word, you can get executed for that. You need somebody.
I need a good lawyer.
Yeah.
Who in my family read something about law school that I could put in this position.
It's pretty serious. And I know this cover up the Syria thing, or the idea of the Syria, of Syria being the issue about which he wanted to talk to the Russians. That is pretty flimsy.
It's BS, folks.
I mean, when did this happen? When did he start? I have the articles and I don't have the dates in front of me. Do you know about when, like, what month did he start talking about, can I use your phone to call Russia? He wanted to go, he was planning.
Well, it was after the election, during the transition, but before they took power.
Yeah, because another thing that I the headline from a few months back in the New York Times that grabbed my attention was another pre-inaugural piece that the headline that they put on it, and it was as it turns out, I grabbed it. It was a Maggie Haberman piece too, and I'm trying to scroll back and find it. But the headline was basically that they were denying. Trump was busily denying the idea that he would be pursuing even security clearances for Jared and or Ivanka. Yeah, I mean,
which is another point. I mean, why does Jared have security clearance at this point?
Yes.
Why is he even allowed in the White House?
Well,
at
he
this
shouldn't
point?
at this point. Now,
he's
now
under
what we know
investigation
about
for
him. He never
potential
should
treason.
have.
What the hell is he doing there?
Yeah, that's not good. But yeah, here was it. Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner will not seek security clearances, sources say. Maggie Haberman and also, let's see, David Goodman, Coral Davenport, Michael Scheer. November 16th, so right after the election. So, but the thing that struck me is, how are we supposed to believe
Not
that
seeking it, they just gave it to me.
Yeah, well, that's true, too.
They insisted.
That was a very, they were very, they wordsmithed it, and I guess the Times didn't really notice it, that, well, we're not going to seek it. I'm just positive I'm going to get it. There's no question.
I wasn't looking to be appointed emperor. They just said that I had to.
But the idea that that Jared Kushner at this point in time that we're talking about had in fact a secret plan, so secret that it couldn't be shared with any elements of the United States government, current or incoming, to fix Syria, that he needed to use Russian communications equipment inside their embassy for, so that the only people who would get it are Russians.
While he was not seeking clearance.
Right. So I'm not even not even interested in a security clearance for
the whole thing
upcoming,
doesn't hang together though at all.
That and of course the shocking thing is of course the idea that he would use their communication equipment. Even Kislyak was blown away by that request because. And that's another problem. I guess,
Jared, our stuff doesn't work.
That's true. If our secure communications worked, you would not be in this trouble, nor would you be a part of an incoming administration at this point. But anyway, they were kind of blown away by the request, and really it's because the request is, as somebody else I think hinted at anyway. The idea that this would be a back channel for something, and it's funny, they latched onto that term because those are real things. There are back channels, but I mean, in a back channel, there's two-way communication, between the sides. The only people, literally, if the stuff works, if the communications equipment works, the only people who will be able to hear your communications are the Russian government. There's no, what's the other direction? Back channel. I mean, I guess you can talk back on it. And Kushner will then walk down to Trump Tower.
They're using back channel as if it's a synonym for legitimate. Informal. But no, that's really not what it is.
Yeah, it's a secret communication. That's called espionage.
It is. And you can get in trouble for that.
Yeah, executed.
Max Bergman, who is a senior fellow at the Center for American Progress, has this really interesting tweet storm I storified here on the Jared Kushner-Russia social media connection, which I also think is another interesting piece on this.
Secure social media.
Do you ever get the feeling, he writes, that everybody else is off somewhere, meeting with Sergei Kislyak, but you're just like home alone by yourself?
Apparently that's the case.
That was Chris Kantak speaking to start this off, but I thought that was pretty funny. So putting the Kushner news in broader context of the campaign is even more damning. The Russians, according to the IC, that's the intelligence community, ran a parallel campaign to help Trump win. Not just hacking and bots, but targeted social efforts. Yeah. Intelligence officials have found that Moscow's agents bought ads on Facebook to target specific populations, a story in Time magazine. Mm-hmm. How in the world did the Russians know who to target?
Yes.
They aren't 10 feet tall. Sophisticated micro-targeting is not something they can just do.
Yes. If you've ever had the...
the Democrats didn't do it all that well, and they were trying to win an election, and they're professionals.
Right. If you ever ran across a Russian bot and you would, and he would say things like, I am making American myself, also from Ohio. You realize the targeting's not that... somebody's helping.
Right. When political consultants work abroad... They work with and through locals because they don't have local knowledge. So who did Russians work through? Which brings us to Kushner.
Yes.
He was central to the campaign. This is a Forbes piece titled Exclusive Interview How Jared Kushner Won Trump the White House. The secret weapon of the Trump campaign is son-in-law Jared Kushner, who created a stealth data machine that leveraged social media.
Yes, this was the original intent of my recording a Monday show. That's why I had to come back on live. I said, this is now obsolete. People have passed me by on this one.
Right. Peter Thiel, it's hard to overstate and hard to summarize Jared's role in the campaign. If Trump was the CEO, Jared was the COO. Kushner and Forbes, I helped facilitate a lot of relationships that wouldn't have happened otherwise. Really? With the Russians?
Yeah.
In Forbes'
That would have happened.
In Forbes' interview, he boasts about the secret data operation that did social media targeting. He hired Cambridge Analytica.
Yes.
This is why a lot of attention on Cambridge Analytica as potential nexus point. Cambridge Analytica, or CA, has extensive Kremlin links.
They do. We've gone over them on the show.
Right?
They were an inevitability once the Mercer money came in. But okay,
right.
Yes.
Another overlooked point, we now know Trump associates met with Russian officials in Europe in 2015. This is from The Guardian. British spies were first to spot Trump's links with Russia. Exclusive GCHQ, that's the British spy group, is said to have alerted U.S. agencies after becoming aware of the contacts in 2015. This is in The Guardian. It's part of the tweet storm. And The Guardian basically says that the British and other international spy agencies had to alert the U.S. about the Trump ties to Russia because the U.S. isn't allowed to go looking up domestic American citizens and just go follow them. But there are no such restrictions on other countries. And so they shared some of that with the intelligence community, telling them there's a lot of fishy stuff going on here.
So you're saying it's important to be able to share intelligence reliably with your allies?
Yeah, and one of the reasons Trump may be mad at, the allies and had such a disastrous trip in Europe is because a lot of stuff he doesn't want happening.
Or sharing. Okay, so good. We'll have no help.
Right? So far he's gotten the Brits mad, and he's gotten the Israelis mad. And maybe they were the ones that were telling the U.S. government that Trump is linked with Russia. Who knows? This was confirmed by Clapper and Brennan in recent testimony. It's important because this is before Manafort Page-Flynn association with the campaign. Also remember, very few people with Trump during the primary. True. In 2015, when Forbes visited the Trump campaign floor in the skyscraper, there was literally nothing there. Just campaign manager Corey Lewandowski and spokesperson Hope Hicks.
Yeah, remember how does she do it?
Right. So which Trump associate in 2015 met with Russian officials causing Europe intel to freak out? Well, the UK was so concerned they went directly to Brennan. This is likely not some rando field director. Had to be somebody high profile and clearly linked to Trump for Euro intel to sound the alarm. So that just leads us back to our old buddy there, Kushner, and there's a lot of suspicion about that.
The whole thing is a little stupid in terms of
and none of that is proof. But the point is, there's enough there so that why the hell is this guy in the White House and why does he have security clearance of any kind?
Yeah. And this morning, I don't know if he is in the White House anymore. I don't know if he's going to work today, for one thing. But we came back to, I guess, headlines about this idea that this one cracks me up. Like, now the story is, and I guess this too comes from Kushner or Kushner operatives. Yeah, well, about that going back to work thing or being in the White House. I was thinking about maybe it would be a good time to do a 6-month review. I, in fact, always had planned it. Ivanka and I always planned every 6 months we would review our status here, and maybe we would just give up entirely and move back to New York. Although we've leased this house for $1 billion a week or whatever from the Chilean billionaire. And we moved our kids into schools, et cetera. But we're thinking about going back.
We can leave at any time. What's the big deal?
And this was all part of the plan. Every 6 months we would commit treason and think about leaving.
You can't ask them because they're busy this week. Leaving. Apparently Ivanka is making champagne popsicles for this Memorial Day.
Oh. Can you do that?
Yeah.
Is that a thing?
No,
champagne popsicles. Oh, okay. Well, I don't even know what to say to that.
Ivanka Antoinette.
Yeah, really.
Right? She wants to cut billions from the child nutrition program.
Well, she doesn't. She's very modest.
40% of American children are in poverty, and she wants to make champagne popsicles.
That seems fitting, I suppose. But, yeah,
because that just deserves another 50,000 fluff pieces about how wonderful Ivanka is, and she's a moderating influence on her father.
Yeah. Although that we may
she's
learn
married to a
something
traitor.
about this. If she continues to get the soft treatment and he ends up as the traitor, then we know whose PR machine is the better.
I've always said, I said this from the beginning, Ivanka is the dangerous one.
Well, she grew up in the tradition here. Let's see. Yeah, look at that. Champagne popsicle. I am beginning to see this pop up a little bit. That's weird.
It is weird. Anyway, so to step back and look at the big picture here, Trump goes overseas. He does some very funky things in the Middle East, which are not necessarily going to pay off long term and actually may contribute to the destabilization of the region even more. Forget about the faux pas and the wandering off, not knowing where he was with Bibi Netanyahu.
That was pretty good.
The 110 or 130 billion or whatever it is arms sale to Saudi Arabia is a terrible thing.
If it happened.
And then he moves on to Europe and does even worse. And then you read all of these fluff pieces about what a great trip he had. It was a terrible trip. He's basically destroyed the U.S.-German special relationship that's kept the world safe since World War II, with nothing to substitute in its place. And if Putin wanted to coordinate how to break up NATO, there couldn't be a better way than what Trump is doing. And while all of this is happening, Kushner gets caught with setting up back channels to the Russians, and we think it's about his financial empire and wanting to get more loans, but at the same time, collusion with the Russians on the election is floating more and more and more, if not from the U.S., then from other agencies. And the Republicans in Congress are essentially doing nothing about it because to them, staying in power trumps everything, even though their agenda is going into the toilet. So congratulations. That's what's going on. Happy Memorial Day.
Okay, excellent. It seems like a fitting tribute to our fallen service members.
Yeah, who died so that we could get Trump in office so we could break up the alliance that they died for.
And he can have lower interest loans on 666 Fifth Avenue for Jared Kushner, who is a SEAL and a Green Beret and all that stuff.
So with that, I thank you for having me on for this special live presentation. This is great work in speaking with my friend David Waldman, Kagro in the morning. At some point, the references that we have to these pieces will be up in the summary that Scott Anderson does for the radio show each time.
Yes, we thank him for his sacrifice.
But the Pundit Roundup is also up this morning with a lot of the stories already there. So give it a read, take care, and we'll talk to you. I'll talk to you on Wednesday. David will be here back tomorrow, right?
Yes.
As far as you know.
Right.
Unless something happens.
Right.
FBI's not talking to you.
Not today.
No?
No.
You're not using Russian equipment?
Sometimes it feels like it, but
right?
no.
You don't have a Russian refrigerator, do you?
That I could have. I don't have any refrigerator. So
okay.
It's
well, just throw the big ice chunks with the big tongs into the box, and hopefully things will get fixed.
Yeah, I got to make an
Take
ice
care,
run.
and I'll talk to you.
Okay, thanks very much, Greg. We will see you on Wednesday. I do have to make an ice run today. Great day to be going to buy ice, too. Everybody in there. Well, on the one hand, it doesn't look suspicious in any way. But on the other hand, a lot of places are actually out of ice. Big cooler day. I got to get one of these better high-tech coolers as well. I've been going through $50, $60 worth of ice in all this, which in the grand scheme of things is not so terrible. But it's all money that I would rather not have paid, and I thought I had invested in the refrigerator. We are still without a refrigerator. Those of you anxiously watching that moving target, remember that we don't have our repair guy come here until even, I guess, is it Wednesday? The 31st is our target date. And it still may turn out that our repair guy shows up to say, I can't repair this. What are you, crazy? I need Russian equipment. I have to do this inside the embassy. I need a back channel to LG, our manufacturer, on this. So it may be that on Wednesday they come and they say, either I know I can't do it, or I'll have to come back tomorrow with a specialist who will tell you for sure that I can't do it. So it may be that we're still living out of the ice box here for some time to come. So I need to get a better one and there are fantastic high tech and high price tag coolers out there. I understand, like my microphone, a Yeti microphone. There are Yeti coolers, and I don't think that they are the same company. Some danger of confusion in the trademarks there. You guys have to straighten that stuff out. But I understand that these Yeti coolers are fantastic. But I looked on the internet, how much for one of these crazy, stupid and do you know that they have like $500, $600, $1,800 coolers out there? You just put ice in them and everything. They're supposed to be fantastic. And people who were reviewing them are saying the ice lasted like 5 days in my cooler, which would have saved me, I don't know, $30 in ice, but that's only like, that's less than 10% of the way to these amazing, the prices on these coolers. I don't use coolers enough to really make it worth doing that. But is there no middle ground? Something that can't keep ice for 3 days for $100? Is there some way I can save money on this ice? Anyway, terrible tragedy. The country is on the edge of its collective seat. I know. I just wanted to give you an update on all of that. There's no way to fit the rest of everything in here. I don't even know where to start. I guess I can begin by discussing some of what I wanted to put together on Kushner. He's not out yet, and so I guess it's still possible to catch up on what he's going on about. That Max Bergman tweet storm, I think, hit the highlights of where I was hoping to go, but did so really quickly. I don't know if everybody caught all the points in that one, but maybe what we could do is we could read some of the articles he pointed to. I thought he did a great job putting together in 10 seconds worth of reading this point that Kushner, what I was trying to get at, on Friday, of course, we're giving you the background of his horrible slumlord empire, which, I mean, as distasteful as it is, it's a pretty common story. I mean, there are people like that all over the place who own small numbers of low-income apartments, large numbers of low-income apartments, whatever it might be. But they don't give fantastic service, and people who live in those apartments tend to get crappy service in terms of the way they're dealt with, and certainly the way repairs are made. So there's nothing extraordinary about that, except for the fact that they're doing it at volume, and so the family's fortune depends on screwing the hell out of these their tenants, and yet the media profile of Jared Kushner is brilliant businessman because rich, flashy up-and-comer because young, married to Trump, married to Ivanka Trump in particular, so big splashy thing, and of course then the election, that only raises the stock for him. But a more honest or in-depth look at things reveals, one, that the flashy real estate empire is in fact based on, like we said, squeezing blood out of stones, out of extraordinarily low income stones at that, and cheating them and leveraging the legal system in ways which they don't cross any legal lines. He can do all these things. It's essentially leveraging the legal system to convert claims that at common sense we all know not to have any validity, but convert them into legal, to confer legal standing on these claims and to ratify them, so that there's just this constant transfer of, I was going to say transfer of wealth, but it's not wealth in the hands of the people who originally have it, but collected and siphoned into the right pocket, one single pocket. It does become wealth. If you own 15, 20, 25, 35,000 units and you steal / legally convert $3,000 to $5,000 per unit, into your pocket, you can get rich along the way. And then they're trying to parlay it into bigger, better stuff. And his father had some considerable success in converting the grandfather's construction / landlord business into commercial real estate and somewhat larger, somewhat more upscale installations. But the flash for which they have recently become famous, and which has made them increasingly wealthy, or at least wealthy looking on the outside, has got troubles of its own. We know about, of course, this stupidly named, or stupidly addressed, anyway, building, the 666 Fifth Avenue, which, again, I don't understand why they even put that number on that building. I mean, they can't monkey around with the numbers. We were talking about this one at home yesterday. My wife's pointing out this. They won't even put a 13th floor in some buildings, but they're going to put 666 on the outside of the thing. Although, maybe, I don't know. Was that as popularly known before, like, The Omen? Is that it? Or is that the movie? The Omen? Okay, thank you. I don't recall any other reference to that, or people didn't walk around in the 1880s saying, "Oh my God, 666, that's the number of the beast." I don't think, my good man, hey, old fellow, isn't that the number of the beast? So I think that probably did it. So maybe it was already that, but you can't. These are the things they can rejigger all the time. I mean, with enough money, you get to go to City Hall and say, "You know what? Why isn't this 668, 664, something?" But I don't know. Maybe people thought that was cute. Anyway, so he's stuck with this building, and the more you look into it, the dumber the deal is. He's famous for owning it. It's their flagship property. But first of all, well, they bought it at a time when I guess this was a good idea. Having a headline in the local press, the local papers, of course, being the New York Times. That's like the flashy stuff that Greg was talking about, rich people stories and weddings of rich people or whatever. And you want, in other words, at the time they did this, having a headline in the New York Times saying, this guy, well, see, right now it would be spun differently, but at the time, this brilliant young businessman is the proud owner of what is now the most expensive office property in the world, or in America, or New York. I was at least in New York, and certainly if that was the case in Manhattan, it was probably the entire country. I don't know about the world. Maybe Hong Kong has you on that. I don't know. But that was a big deal, and it was a good deal. I mean, it was a bad deal to buy it. I mean, it was a good deal to get those headlines back then. It was fantastic to be in the New York Times as the owner of the most expensive property in America. A few years later, after the real estate crash, of course, it was probably not such a great thing because, of course, on the one hand, I own the most expensive building in New York, status symbol, right? A few years later, that same ownership situation came to be spun as the Kushners paid the highest price tag ever for a mixed-use commercial condominium property, and the real estate crash in general, housing in particular, but real estate in general, then put a different spin on that. It was now like, you made the worst real estate deal ever. You're dumb. You're a very stupid person, not a brilliant up-and-coming businessman. But they haven't lost it yet, and they haven't even felt the greatest part of the pain involved in having bought it under terms that leave them with gigantic, unmanageable balloon payments later. But imagine post-real estate crash, which is where we are now, finding out that you own the largest white elephant property ever, and your balloon payments are still coming. That is what serves as important background in figuring out, for instance, why Kushner keeps trying to renegotiate loans with Chinese banks, why he's trying to get additional funding for the building. Like the big headline, this was the part that was confusing to me, was that there were big headlines about his family having paid $1.8 billion for this property. Wow, what a huge price tag, et cetera, et cetera. And then he was trying to work out some kind of a deal with the Bank of China, as I recall initially, and it may have been that he's also tried to work it with some other Chinese banks to get another $4 billion in loans. And I okay, if $1.8 billion was the highest price tag paid for that kind of property, what would you need 3 and 4 times, like a 1.8, I guess twice, a little bit more than twice that amount of money? Why would you need $4 billion in loans for this building? It's not really that big of a building. And I guess part of the answer is not only did they pay too much for it, but they paid on terrible terms for it. And I guess they were willing to do that because everything they touched, they thought turned to gold, and real estate being what it is, will never diminish in value, and a giant crash, which they didn't foresee coming, I guess. And the Chinese deal hasn't really worked out for them. But in the meantime, they also have the Jersey City properties going up. The Kushner one building's at Journal Square. And that's going on. And we found out recently that the way they're financing that is through the EB-5 visas that Jared's sister was over in China hawking and saying, give us $500,000 and we'll give you a green card, in the middle of our immigration crackdown being led by my brother's father-in-law. But don't worry about it. We'll shoehorn you into the country for a cool $500,000. So that's what's financing the Jersey City stuff. But the 666 Fifth Avenue kind of remains floating out there unresolved. The Chinese banks wouldn't do it, couldn't do it, didn't see the sense in doing it. I'm not sure exactly what. So that's where the motivation arises to try and find Russian sources for it. And this doesn't, this helps make sense of, for instance, if you were for whatever reason inclined to believe that Jared Kushner wanted to establish a back channel of communications with the Russians directly so that they could discuss Syria. One might then ask, okay, so you had a meeting with Kislyak to ask him if you could essentially use his telephone. Can I use your phone in the Russian embassy to call Moscow because I got to settle Syria? Why would you be settling Syria? You're his son-in-law. Are you even going to be in the administration? Yes, no, I don't know. Headlines are saying you're not. Headlines are saying you're not even going to ask for a security clearance, much less be handed the portfolio of settling Syria. Well, don't believe all that. I'm lying about all of that. Okay, right? So here's what I want to do. I want to use your phone. I got to talk to some people, and bzz, 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 in your ear, Kislyak, what are my plans? And then Kislyak says, okay, I am taken aback by this request to use our communications equipment, but I'll see if I can arrange it. But in the meantime, I want you to talk to somebody else. Really? Who? The head of a state-run Russian bank. And that's I don't have the name at the fingertips. This is not Alpha Bank at this point. It's the other one we talked about that has the long name that ends in Econombank with a V. I can't remember the whole name. It's in all the articles. I don't have it in front of me. We'll hit it later when we start reading the articles. And we talked about it on Friday. And we've hit the name before. But the idea being that you've got to talk to the bank about Syria is anybody's got an idea about why that might happen? And the answer is there's no reason in the world why you would have to talk to a bank about Syria. Unless, of course, I guess the only possibility is you're Oliver North and you need to transfer money to Syria and you got to do it around the sanctions, and so I'm committing that kind of treason instead. So more than likely what's happening here, and all the articles seem to outline it this way, was they said, I'll tell you what, you want to fix Syria, fine, and you can maybe even have our cooperation in fixing Syria if, say, for instance, these very costly sanctions against this particular bank and against a lot of Russian entities, Russian people, the Russian government, if those could be lifted, lots of good things could happen. And in fact, one of the things that might happen would be that you could find that this bank is now eligible to loan on very favorable terms to, say, somebody who needed a couple $2 billion for, I don't know, the most expensive property in Manhattan and therefore in the United States of America that's got a bunch of balloon payments coming up. Anyway, so there's that angle of the story, which is what I think was driving things for Jared Kushner. But the other angle of the story, just a little bit more simple in terms of our dealing with Kushner in the media, is, this is supposed to be the brilliant wunderkind of New York real estate. Why, he's a mini Donald Trump. And I guess he is in a certain way, in that the real fortune was built on the backs of low-income families being squeezed for every cent they could get out of them, $5,000 at a time, and leveraging the legal system to make that happen, while he was buying properties that gave him Uptown Flash. But the Uptown Flash properties are paper, and they're garbage, and those are losing money. And I understand even, lost leaders and the idea that you got to have these flashy projects. And certainly there's just, no matter how much money you're making, being a slumlord, you're still not, a flashy Manhattan real estate guy. Even if you've got lots of money, they look at you funny if you're getting your money that way for some reason. I don't know. Some people are managed to get over it, I guess. So they needed to convert themselves into high-class people, so they bought these properties, and they're losing all their money on those, which is pretty amazing too. Again, why do you have this reputation as a brilliant businessman when all the deals for which we think of you as a real mover and shaker are in fact money losers? Not only are they money losers, they're going to land you in jail because you're so desperate not to lose control of these projects that you're going to take loans from Chinese banks, from Russian banks, and all the strings that come with them. Anyway, I guess not hard to understand when you get a little bit of information about their background, and when you see all the other otherwise inconsequential stories like Albert Titus here pointing out. And I did have this one set aside just as a funny side note, the little story about the coat of arms, the quote unquote Trump coat of arms that he uses on the golf courses here in the United States now. Anyway, when he wants to make his properties, hotels, golf courses, etc., look high class. I need something that says class. That's like what do they do in England? Like a coat of arms. We're going to have one of those. And he's got this Trump coat of arms that one is more or less fake. And I thought it may have come from the fact that his father, his father was of German extraction, and they would have coats of arms if you were a prominent family in Germany way back when. But England and the United Kingdom is where that stuff survived the longest. So I thought he was maybe relying on his mother's Scottish ancestry to try and pull an ancient coat of arms there. But as it turns out, it was even cheaper and cheesier than that. The upshot of this whole thing is that he stole a coat of arms. Now, the New York Times tracked down exactly what happened here, which is basically that there was a legit coat of arms that actually existed out there. And it's real, the one he's using on the Trump golf properties. It's real. It's just not a Trump coat of arms. As it turns out, the coat of arms, this is how it comes. He comes by this coat of arms, belonged to Joseph Edward Davies. Granted in 1939, they have over in Britain, they keep track of such things. There's a college of heraldry that's basically like a trademark office for coats of arms. And for some reason, what can I tell you? For some reason, the British have maintained a monarchy. And it's a hereditary monarchy, and we all know about it, and it still exists. And it's hilarious now. It was maybe not so funny at some other times, or, for instance, a terrible idea for governance. Now they don't use it for that. But anyway, part of the tradition they carried over. The British never give anything up, apparently. So they're going to keep their monarchy, and they're also keeping the College of Heraldry, and they're registering coats of arms. In 1939, people are still registering coats of arms, which at that point, they should have said, listen, I get that, it's nostalgic, it's fun and all that, but we're not registering coats of arms anymore. There are no more knights dressing up in armor. There are knights, of course. It's an honorary title, but if there's no real jousting and you don't have to maintain a giant estate, the coats of arms we don't need anymore. You can just write your name. Everybody knows you're important, or you know which buildings you own in New York City, whatever. You don't need a coat of arms. But in 1939, they hadn't realized that yet. Joseph Edward Davies registers this coat of arms. And it's as coats of arms go, whatever. There's the 3 lions, rampant lions, and there's 2 chevrons on there and whatnot. Blah, blah, blah. All the trimmings, right? Well, anyway, so in 1939, Joseph Edward Davies registers this thing. Who is Joseph Edward Davies? Well, here's how it gets stolen by Trump. He is the 3rd husband of Marjorie Meriwether Post. If you're in the Washington, D.C. area, you might know the Marjorie Merriweather Post Pavilion in Maryland, a nice concert venue. If you are in Florida, or I guess now anywhere in the world, you might know Marjorie Merriweather Post as the socialite who built Mar-a-Lago. Everyone knows Mar-a-Lago now, Pervalago in the Trump hands. That now, well, it is what it is. Everybody knows Mar-a-Lago now. So Mar-a-Lago, in other words, had the Joseph Edward Davies family's coat of arms. I don't know about all over it, but it showed up somewhere. It was prominently displayed somewhere. When Trump bought Mar-a-Lago, he was like, good, now I own this. That's not the way it works. But, since I've been telling you since forever, Trump has no idea or no interest in differentiating between having custody of something and having ownership of something. I bought this building. This coat of arms was on display in it. Now I own it. If it had had the British royal family's coat of arms displayed in it because Joseph Edward Davies was a loyal British subject or something, Trump would be saying, I'm in line of succession to the English crown now. I bought it, and that's all there is to it. So he had it there, and he was like, oh, this is nice. This is the kind of classy stuff you want. So as I begin to buy more things, I'll make this my coat of arms. And one of the things he did with it was, since in the full coat of arms, there's that shield, and then the shield has the lions and the chevrons and all kinds of other crazy markings on it that have heraldic names. And, these guys, I guess, with nothing to do for a couple hundred years, there's a crazy heraldic name for it, a dot. I just put a dot over here. Well, that's not just a dot. It's a, whatever. They have a whole terminology for it. And there's the thing above it there. There's this gloved hand holding a spear or an arrow or something on there. Then there's the little banner underneath where you would put a motto of some sort. They have the little scrolling underneath the shield, and you put the family motto on there. Whether that's, baconus, lettuce, tomatoes, or whatever you want to put under there. Something else. Usually means something, and it's usually in Latin. In this case, integritas, which is presumably, because it says so in the piece here, Latin for integrity. It certainly looks like it. And the coat of arms has undergone something of a change. I guess somewhere along the line, Trump sees this thing and says, this will be my coat of arms. It's mine now because I own the building, Mar-a-Lago, where this thing is on display. And I don't know who this Integritas guy is, but too bad, chump. You lost the house. I own it now. I'm going to change the family name of Integritas to Trump. And so now the banner underneath reads Trump. Of course, that's supposed to be where the motto goes, and maybe he didn't recognize Integritas. Maybe he thought it was a family name. Maybe he just didn't care what it was. But it doesn't say Trump, and everything I own has to say Trump. So it's very telling, of course, that the family motto of the Trump clan is Trump. What's important to the Davies family? Integritas. What's important to the Trump family? Trump. So I guess he got it right in that sense. I had no idea he had graduated from the Heraldic College, which is not someplace you can graduate from. But neither is Trump University, so that didn't stop him. Anyway, I don't know. It's telling somehow. That's certainly true. But no great crime there. Just an embarrassing moment for an American moron. He tried, by the way, to use he wanted to trademark the coat of arms for use worldwide, and especially for use on his golf courses and properties in the UK, where people actually do use these things, and I guess he thought it would be cool to have his own. But just because you bought Mar-a-Lago doesn't mean that the British authorities are going to recognize this thing, especially if in 1939, well before you bought Mar-a-Lago, they already had registered it to the Davies family, and you can't just walk in there. I mean, one of the things about maintaining these heraldic traditions in this college and actually assigning coats of arms to people, are recognizing them officially as if somebody else shows up and uses it. You can't just show up back in the old days with that on your shield and say, yeah, but I'm not Davies, I'm Trump. Because, you show up with that banner. The whole idea of it was everybody was supposed to recognize you instantly as a representative of the Davies family. Although in 1939, I don't know if people were still doing that, but way back when. And you can't just show up and say, yeah, but I changed it from Integritas to Trump, and so it's Trump now. Doesn't go like that. They were not interested in allowing him to register that. So in the UK, in his golf courses, he had to make up another coat of arms, and he uses that. But here in all the properties at the Trump National Golf Course or whatever, when they bought decals to stick on the front of their really classy golf carts, they have the Davies family crest that just says Trump instead, because here in America we don't give a damn, and we don't even know who Davies was, so there's less likelihood of confusion. I doubt very much whether there's any serious confusion in the UK. You know, registered in 1939, nobody says, oh yeah, wait a minute, what are you doing? That's Davies. You know, that's not Trump. They don't care. Anyway, just kind of interesting and embarrassing and stupid, and makes us look bad. Thank you, Mr. Trump. All right, so anyway, back to the main thrust of the show. I had, as I said, begun on Friday recording for today about Jared Kushner, and I was still doing some backgrounder stuff, and I think we kind of have to skip past all of that now, although there was some very interesting stuff about his relationship with Chris Christie and with his father, etc., and even a fun anecdote about one of the New Jersey Pauls that they interviewed in these background stories being Pat Siebold, who is a county-level Democratic official in Essex County, and that she's from Livingston, New Jersey, which is where, I guess, is that where the Kushners or Charles Kushner lived? That's the next town over. And Livingston is, of course, Chris Christie's home as well. Next town over for me, West Orange. Pat Siebold, known primarily to me not as an Essex County politician, but as an 8th grade English teacher at the time at Lincoln Junior High School, where I went. And I said, hi, Mrs. Siebold, you're in the newspaper. So that's fun. We're all connected in some way or another. But things had progressed by the time really late Saturday had rolled around, and I was hoping to get to this other material that I think Max Bergman put together rather nicely, and which parts in particular were of interest to me. A couple. We'll go through his tweet storm again that Greg put together, and I'll stop where I wanted to stop. There was, he started off by saying he was going to put the Kushner news in broader context of the campaign and how it's even more damning there, right? Right up top, the Russians, according to the IC, intelligence community, ran a parallel campaign to help elect Trump win, not just hacking and bots, but targeted social efforts. Intelligence officials have found that Moscow's agents bought ads on Facebook to target specific populations. That apparently from out of Time magazine. Let's open that one up and just have that nearby. And that's the one, I guess, with the cover of the White House being converted, not into the Kremlin, but to, well, this is St. Basil's Cathedral, which is probably more famous than the Kremlin and is co-located pretty much with the Kremlin, but we all know that onion-domed cathedral, brightly colored, probably better recognized than any building from the Kremlin. Anyway, this was the Inside Russia's Social Media War on America piece, the Massimo Calabresi piece, which I never did read on the air, but put in one of the roundups that Scott puts together for you to take a look at. If you didn't get a chance to do it, very interesting, and maybe we can skim through a little bit of it here, but the upshot of it is, well, here, we'll read the lead here. On March 2nd, a disturbing report hit the desks of U.S. counterintelligence officials in Washington. For months, American spy hunters had scrambled to uncover details of Russia's influence operation against the 2016 presidential election. In offices in both D.C. and suburban Virginia, they had created massive wall charts to track the different players in Russia's multi-pronged scheme. But the report in early March was something new. It described how Russia had already moved on from the rudimentary email hacks against politicians it had used in 2016. Now the Russians were running a more sophisticated hack on Twitter. The report said the Russians had sent expertly tailored messages carrying malware to more than 10,000 Twitter users in the Defense Department. Depending on the interests of the targets, the messages offered links on stories two stories on recent sporting events or the Oscars, which had taken place the previous week. And when clicked, the links took users to a Russian-controlled server that downloaded a program allowing Moscow's hackers to take control of the victim's phone or computer and Twitter account. Scary, but not the election exactly, right? As they scrambled to contain the damage from the hack and regain control of any compromised devices, spy hunters realized they faced a new kind of threat. In 2016, Russia had used thousands of covert human agents and robot computer programs to spread disinformation referencing the stolen campaign emails of Hillary Clinton, amplifying their effect. Now, counterintelligence officials wondered what chaos could Moscow unleash with thousands of Twitter handles that spoke in real time with the authority of the armed forces of the United States. At any given moment, perhaps during a natural disaster or a terrorist attack, Pentagon Twitter accounts might send out false information. As each tweet corroborated another and covert Russian agents amplified the message even further afield, the results could be panic and confusion, or who knows what else, surrender for that matter. For many Americans, Russian hacking remains a story about the 2016 election, but there is another story taking shape, marrying 100 years of expertise in influence operations to the new world of social media. Russia may finally have gained the ability it long sought but never fully achieved in the Cold War to alter the course of events in the U.S. by manipulating public opinion. The vast openness and anonymity of social media has cleared a dangerous new route for anti-democratic forces. Using these technologies, it is possible to undermine democratic government, and it's becoming easier every day, said Rand Waltzman of the Rand Corporation. That's pretty amazing that his name is Rand, who ran a major Pentagon research program to understand the propaganda threats posed by social media technology. That's just sort of setting the table for what is perhaps yet to come and what form the Russian hacking may take in the future. But it also serves as a hint at sort of where did they always intend to go with this stuff? And the next tweet in the Max Bergman tweet storm helps us connect a little closer to what Kushner was all about. How in the world did the Russians know who to target? It's a pretty easy guess to target the Department of Defense, right? I mean, I don't think that they need special translation skills in Russia to figure out that if you want to influence the armed forces or use the apparent imprimatur of the United States Armed Forces to fool the rest of America, well then hack DOD personnel. That doesn't need any particular doesn't require any particular deep thinking. But I guess in order to influence the election, though, that you have to have a better feel for. You have to be able to figure out who are the influencers who have the networks to pass around information to people, specifically to people who won't do any serious digging into whether or not something is true, just so long as it kind of confirms their pre-existing biases. I mean, that's true of just about anybody, but you're looking in particular for people who are going, I want to tap into the networks who love to share chain emails about ludicrous claims about the Clintons or the Obamas or what have you. We know that those things existed, and you and I probably have a pretty good idea of what kind of people share those things. It's questionable whether the Russians knew or trusted their own judgment anyway enough to execute the program. They might have been able to do it on their own. It's entirely possible. But it certainly would help if they had, like Max Bergman suggests, when political consultants work with other countries abroad, they hire local experts. And that's not so hard to understand. In fact, it happens here in the United States, too. When a presidential campaign kicks off and is in the early stages, and how many times have we heard this story, right? You need to have an Iowa operation because we're stuck with Iowa as the first caucuses, and I guess we're stuck with them as caucuses, and we're stuck with New Hampshire as the first primaries. And, I guess some of the people who don't have any particular interest in changing that would be the political consulting community, which I guess helps explain why that hangs on so tenaciously. Since everybody in the politics game for the love of politics says maybe we're choosing the wrong candidates with this stupid system that we've got. The political consultants, who hold a tremendous amount of sway, I would guess, inside the party apparatus, they like it this way because they know how to work in this system and sell in it. And what are they selling? If you hire me, you want to run for president, here's what you need to know. You got to be able to run strong in Iowa and New Hampshire. And, if you're late to the game, and I tell you, forget those two, you're not going to be able to make it, but I know how to make you run strong in South Carolina, whatever it is. The consultants will sell you their networks. I've run X campaigns, blah, blah, blah. I've done the Iowa caucus thing before. You want to hire somebody who can do what? Introduce you to the local influencers, the people who are the county chairs in Iowa, the people who are the county chairs in New Hampshire, who can let you into their homes to hold coffees and do all the retail politicking that you need to make yourself a viable candidate. So that's what you're hiring. And so it's no different in that sense here in the United States. We know this story. You got to hire local people to tell you how to navigate the local system. And so you need somebody to guide the Russians. You got all the bot technology you need. And by most accounts, they did a fairly good job, certainly not undetectable, but a fairly good job nonetheless in designing these bots so that Twitter would be well populated with people repeating stories that, though they were incredible and stupid to you and me, were believable and ultimately shareable by people who are idiots and voting for Trump. And that was what they were looking for. So they needed to find out, how do we target the right people? Twitter is a pretty vast universe. How do we find dumb people who are willing to believe and share this stuff? And as Bergman says, that's what brings us to Kushner. So he was central to the campaign, according to Forbes and their report, exclusive interview, how Jared Kushner won Trump the White House. That's a pretty extraordinary claim. Let's take a look at that one. But the upshot of this and a few other articles was that, if you were wondering, as I was, why would Donald Trump believe Jared Kushner needed to be involved with this campaign? He's a nepotism guy, certainly, and he wants something. He loves having Ivanka around, and Ivanka loves having Jared around, so they had to find something for him to do. So Jared, though, assigns himself this role, and it comes out in the December 20th, 2016 issue of Forbes. All right, so if everybody needs to know, Forbes will tell you because business. What the hell is this Jared Kushner guy doing in the Trump campaign? Yes, he's a successful young real estate investor type guy. And yes, Trump will have an affinity for that. But why entrust the White House to him? Or why entrust the campaign to him? Of what use is he? He's a political neophyte too. And although he owns a paper, the New York Observer, not exactly a powerhouse. He's not really going to be able to leverage that in the way someone might be able to leverage the New York Times or Washington Post into an election victory. Well, this is, I guess, how he sold himself. He told Trump, you don't use computers or email. You do use Twitter. I see that. I wonder whether Jared turned him on to Twitter or not. That's a possibility. But Jared essentially appears, according to a couple of pieces like this, to sell himself to Trump by saying, I know the whole data thing. I watched Moneyball. I saw Moneyball on HBO, and it was really like a good idea, so we're going to do that. We're going to Moneyball your campaign. I'll figure out how to do it. And so he sells himself as a tech wizard. And I don't know to what extent I believe that he is a tech wizard. I do remember reading about him that he loves the look of Apple computer equipment, but is a PC Windows environment guy. And I don't know a lot of people who are super duper computer tech whizzes that either can't deal in both or who love the Apple aesthetic but hate the Apple environment. That's a very unusual combination to me. So while there are lots of tech gurus who are only Mac or only PC and then hate the other one with a passion, I don't know if I've ever run into anybody who considered themselves to be a tech guru who said, I want to buy Apple equipment, and I've seen people say, well, I want to be able to run an emulator and be able to, I got to be able to work in both environments, and I prefer Apple as my base environment, but I need to be able to work in Windows. I've seen that. I've never seen anybody say, I want you to, like, basically get rid of all the iOS material on here. I want to run a PC machine exclusively, but I want it to look like an Apple. That is a little odd, but maybe it exists and I don't know about it outside of Jared Kushner. But he sells himself as the tech guy. I understand the tech, and tech's where it's at. And if you saw Moneyball, you don't think you can just data your way to dominance, but it's true. You can really do it, and even against traditional powerhouses. So he convinces, I guess, Trump of this, and then afterwards goes about the business of selling everybody on the story that he's the one that won them the White House. Exclusive interview, how Jared Kushner won Trump the White House. Stephen Bertoni for Forbes, writing this late 2016 piece. It's been 1 week since Donald Trump pulled off the biggest upset in modern political history, and his headquarters at Trump Tower in New York City is a 58-story onyx-glassed lightning rod. Barricades, TV trucks, and protesters frame a fortified Fifth Avenue. Armies of journalists and selfie-seeking tourists, usually giving the finger, stalk Trump Tower's pink marble lobby, hoping to snap the next political power player who steps into view. 26 floors up, in the same building where washed-up celebrities once battled for Trump's blessing on The Apprentice. What a day. The president-elect is choosing his cabinet, or whatever you could say he was doing at that point. And this contest contains all the twists and turns of his old reality show. Winners will emerge shortly, but today's focus is on the biggest loser, New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, who has just been fired from his role leading the transition, along with most of the people associated with him. The episode is being characterized as a knife fight that ends in a Stalin-esque purge. The most compelling figure in this intrigue, however, wasn't in Trump Tower. Jared Kushner was 3 blocks south, high up in his own skyscraper at 666 Fifth Avenue, where he oversees his family's Kushner Company's real estate empire. Trump's son-in-law, dressed in an impeccably tailored gray suit, impeccably, I'm telling you, sitting on a brown leather couch in his impeccably, you can't say that twice, neat office, displays the impeccably, I guess you can, polite manners, this is on purpose now, that won the 35-year-old a dizzying number of influential friends even before he had gained the ear and trust of the new leader of the free world. Well, that's over. 6 months ago, Governor Christie and I decided this election was much bigger than any differences we may have had in the past, and we worked very well together, he said with a shrug. The media has speculated on a lot of different things, and since I don't talk to the press, but I have a spokesman who also doesn't, they go as they go, but I was not behind pushing him out or his people. Well, he was, but he doesn't want to say so. The speculation was well-founded, given the story's Shakespearean twist. You all know the story about the Christies and the Kushners. We can skip that part. Kushner almost never speaks publicly. His chats with Forbes mark the first time he has talked about the Trump campaign or his role in it. And guess what? He's going to use the first time to tell you he did the whole thing. It's hard to overstate and hard to summarize Jared's role in the campaign, says billionaire Peter Thiel, the only significant Silicon Valley figure to publicly back Trump. If Trump was the CEO, we heard this part, right? Jared was effectively the Chief Operating Officer, or COO, as abbreviated in the tweet storm. Jared Kushner is the biggest surprise of the 2016 election, adds Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, who helped design the Clinton campaign's technology system. Best I can tell, he actually ran the campaign and did it with essentially no resources. He's just one lonely billionaire, depending on his other billionaire friends, and running a campaign for a billionaire. No resources. Oh, and also funded on the outside by the Mercer billionaires. Just 5 vagabond billionaires not knowing what to do. Just a couple of kids and a hard luck story that just, I don't know. I mean, what kind of spin is this? No resources at the beginning, perhaps, the article continues. Underfunded throughout, for sure. What, are you kidding me? But by running the Trump campaign, notably its secret data operation, like a Silicon Valley startup, give me a break, Kushner eventually tipped the states that swung the election. And he did so in a manner that will change the way future elections will be won and lost. Cheating and bringing in the Russians. That's not what we're supposed to believe from this piece, though. President Obama had unprecedented success in targeting, organizing, and motivating voters, but a lot has changed in 8 years, specifically social media. Clinton did borrow from Obama's playbook, but also leaned on traditional media. The Trump campaign, meanwhile, delved into message tailoring, sentiment manipulation, and machine learning. You remember all of this from learning about Cambridge Analytica, and that's eventually where this goes. The traditional campaign is dead, another victim of the unfiltered democracy of the web, and Kushner, more than anyone not named Donald Trump, killed it. We'll see. That achievement, coupled with the personal trust Trump has in him, uniquely positions Kushner to be a power broker of the highest order for at least 4 years, or perhaps 4 months, and then out. We'll see. Every president I've ever known, and by the way, that would be fitting, right? The great, if it is accomplishment, the great difference that social media seems to have made in traditional media is that it has upended the media cycles, and we have now multiple news cycles per day. And I guess then it should stand to reason that something you thought would last for 4 years now only lasts 4 months. It's entirely possible, and it's not just because of social media. It's also because of treason. Anyway, every president I've ever known has one or two people he intuitively and structurally trusts, says former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, who we all know and love, who has known Trump socially for decades because they're both sleazeballs, and is currently advising the president-elect on foreign policy issues. I think Jared might be that person, which must be an amazing thing to say if you're Kissinger. I mean, I guess if you're tired and you don't want to be that guy anymore, you can afford to hand the title off to, even a 35-year-old. Jared Kushner's ascent from Ivanka Trump's little-known husband to Donald Trump's campaign savior happened gradually. In the early days of the scrappy campaign, it was all hands on deck, with Kushner helping research policy positions on tax and trade. No, he didn't. But as the campaign gained steam, other players began using him as a trusted conduit to an erratic candidate. I helped facilitate a lot of relationships that wouldn't have happened otherwise, Kushner says, and that could be true, adding that people felt safe speaking with him without risk of leaks. That was not smart. People were being told in Washington that if they did any work for the Trump campaign, they would never be able to work in Republican politics again. I hired a great tax policy expert who joined under 2 conditions. We couldn't tell anybody he worked for the campaign, and he was going to charge us double. That's believable. Kushner's role expanded as the Trump ticket gained traction, and as it did, so did his enthusiasm. Kushner went all in with Trump last November. Well, duh. After seeing his father-in-law, last November, 2015. After seeing his father-in-law pack a raucous arena in Springfield, Illinois on a Monday night. People really saw hope in the message. They wanted the things that wouldn't have been obvious to a lot of people I would meet in New York media world, the Upper East Side, or at the Robin Hood Foundation dinners. And so this Harvard-educated child of privilege put on a bright red Make America Great Again hat and rolled up his sleeves. He had his people roll his sleeves up. A power vacuum awaited him at Trump Tower. When Forbes visited the Trump campaign floor, the skyscraper, a few weeks before Kushner's Springfield epiphany, there was literally nothing there. You heard this part, right? Literally no desks, chairs, or computers. Just Corey Lewandowski and Hope Hicks. How does she do it? With a strategy that centered on Trump making headline-grabbing statements, often by calling into television shows, supplemented by a rally once or twice a week to provide the appearance of a traditional campaign. It was the epitome of the super light startup to see how little they could spend and still get the results they wanted. In that sense, maybe that is true. Kushner stepped up to turn it into an actual campaign operation. Well, he changed it into something. I wouldn't call it a real campaign operation. Soon he was assembling a speech and policy team, handling Trump's daily schedule, maintaining the finances. Donald kept saying, I don't want people getting rich off the campaign, and I want to make sure we're watching every dollar just like we would do in business. It's not how he conducts his business, of course. He probably was saying, I don't want anybody else getting rich off the campaign. If you get rich, that's okay, because that's Ivanka getting rich. That structure provided a baseline, though still a blip compared with Hillary Clinton's state-by-state machine. Okay, more and more, yada yada, flying all over the country, chatting over McDonald's Filet-O-Fish sandwiches, because yum. Let's see, what else? Despite his itchy Twitter finger, Trump is a Luddite. He reportedly gets his news from print and television, and his version of email is to handwrite a note that his assistant will scan and attach. Among those in his close circle, Kushner was the natural pick to create a modern campaign. Yes, like Trump, he's primarily a real estate guy, but he had invested more broadly, including in media, if you count the New York Observer, and digital commerce, meaning he helped launch Kagro, an online marketplace for big real estate deals. It's barely a toe in there, but okay. More important, he knew the right crowd. Co-investors in Kagro included Thiel and Alibaba's Jack Ma, and Kushner's younger brother, Josh, a formidable venture capitalist who also co-founded the $2.7 billion insurance unicorn Oscar Health. What? Anyway, I called some of my friends from Silicon Valley, some of the best digital marketers in the world, because they're rich. So there you go. And I asked how you scale this stuff. Kushner says they gave me their subcontractors. At first, Kushner dabbled, engaging in what amounted to a beta test using Trump merchandise. I called somebody who works for one of the television companies that I work with, and I had them give me a tutorial on how to use Facebook micro-targeting. Kushner says, synced with Trump's blunt, simple messaging, it worked. The Trump campaign went from selling $8,000 worth of hats and other items a day to $80,000, generating revenue, expanding the number of human billboards, and proving a concept. In another test, Kushner spent $160,000 to promote a series of low-tech policy videos of Trump talking straight into the camera that collectively generated more than 74 million views. Many of them from people who couldn't believe how dumb the stuff they were watching was. Many of them from media types saying, here's a thing that's sort of like campaign material. You should watch it. And P.S., can you believe how dumb it is? And probably some also from, this is what a campaign's supposed to look like. So let's look, this is brilliant. This is so smart. He's talking about laws and stuff. So it's real campaign. But does that strike anybody as improbable? It reminds me very quickly of like the story of Donald Trump in the 80s saying, I'm going to talk to Ronald Reagan and have him make me the nuclear arms negotiator. I can learn everything you need to know about nuclear missiles in an hour and a half, and I know most of it already. This guy says, I have friends in Silicon Valley. So the story is supposed to be, I had somebody come and give me a Facebook tutorial, like how to use Facebook micro-targeting. And then I was like, okay, cool, thank you. And then I stood the media world on its head and elected a president based on that. Could you come over here and teach me everything that there is to know about Facebook? And I don't really understand this Facebook thing, but all the kids love Facebook. So he gets a tutorial, and then he's like, okay, boom, micro-targeting, and I've turned and I invented bots and machine learning for use on Twitter, and we won the presidency, despite the objections of many, many millions more voters than Donald Trump ever got in the end. But I did it, and I got a nice tutorial in an hour. This does not hold together for me as a narrative, but of course there's more to it. By June, the GOP nomination secured. What? How did we get there? Kushner took over all data-driven efforts. Within 3 weeks, in a nondescript building outside San Antonio, he had built what would become a 100-person data hub designed to unify fundraising, messaging, and targeting. He did? Well, run by Brad Parscale, or Parscale. Remember, we never did learn how to pronounce that name, but you remember that name. Yeah, oh, run by somebody else, you mean. Yeah, the thing that Jared built within 3 weeks, and he built a 100-person data hub. Brad Parscale did. And Jared Kushner said, that thing that we need, that I got the tutorial about, do that thing. Do it, and get some people to help you with it. Wow, Jared built it. I mean, I don't know. Maybe Brad has gotten used to seeding, or maybe he's had enough headlines and he's satisfied, but I don't know how this one slips by. He wasn't talking to Forbes. Only Kushner and Trump can get this story in Forbes, I guess. So, run by Brad Parscale, who had previously built small websites for the Trump organization. Now he was going to go big time. How did they win the nomination again? I don't know. Every time someone talks to Brad Parscale, he says, I did it. Every time someone talks to Jared Kushner, he says, I did it. Anyway, run by Parscale, who had previously built only small stuff for the Trump organization. This secret back office would drive every strategic decision during the final months of the campaign. Our people were mostly the ones who volunteered for me pro bono, Kushner says. People from the business world, people from the non-traditional backgrounds. Well, no. This is, of course, millions of dollars spent by, now it didn't cost the campaign anything because the Mercers did it. The Mercers paid for this. But the idea that these guys volunteered and it's a little operation I put together and blah, blah, blah. And also I love well, it was a secret back office. The guy just built little tiny websites, whatever. I got his other piece here. This doesn't connect a whole lot of dots, but I just thought I would throw this one in here. Something I had seen a while ago and had in pocket somewhere. But, yeah, okay. And it's still buried deep down in pocket. And I'm going to have to find another way of calling it up quickly. But did I tag that one? Anyway, there was a story sometime back right after the election. And let's see, what was the name of that? I can't remember what they ended up calling that operation, Parscali's place. Let me look it up this way. But yeah, here we go. I had a story from post-inauguration. That's right, from March 30th, 2017. It's not buried that deep. From the Hill. But for this little secret backwater San Antonio-based thing that they built some small websites, and then Jared gave them some infusion of ideas, and then all of a sudden, this happens. So after the election, when everybody's looking for something to do, Trump daughter-in-law joins Trump campaign digital vendor, according to a report in The Hill. Just thought I'd throw this one in there. The digital vendor behind President Trump's 2016 campaign has now hired Trump's daughter-in-law, according to a new report. Lara Trump, Eric's wife, will serve as a senior political consultant. Why? Because a senior political consultant for San Antonio-based company Gilles Pascal, the Associated Press told, found out on Thursday. Brad Parscali, the organization's president, or just some guy that Jared put there, told the AP that Lara Trump is, quote, an incredibly talented person with the right experience for us, which is to say none, but she knows Eric. Lara Trump, a New Yorker, will work out of Trump Tower in Manhattan, even though San Antonio or whatever. Parscali added Lara Trump has a background in marketing and experience with President Trump's 2016 campaign that fits her new role. Now, Brad Parscale has some experience with President Trump's 2016 campaign, too. But because they're a data-driven company and need people who think digitally, Lara Trump. Okay, I mean, that's not the worst thing in the world. It was a, nepotism hire. They had to give her some kind of paycheck of some kind. I don't really know why, because apparently I thought that the Trumps were super rich and would have no interest in any additional money, no need for any additional money. I don't know what, I didn't know that maybe Lara got bored. She needed something to do. That's legit. I mean, okay, make fun of rich people for being idle or whatever, but, or wives of rich people for taking doofy jobs or occupying themselves with something stupid or whatever. The legitimate point here is people need some occupation. And, doesn't matter whether you're rich, certainly doesn't matter whether you're a woman, doesn't matter whether you happen to be a spouse of a rich person. People need something to do. Okay, fine. So they found a place for her to do this thing. So it's all based in San Antonio. What if it was a weird match, right? Well, we're based in San Antonio. Are you sure you want this? Yes, I would like that, actually. But here's the deal. I'm going to work out of Trump Tower. Okay, but we're hiring you. You see, we're the bosses here. Well, you're really not. I'm a Trump. Okay, I get what you're saying here. It's a no-show job. Okay, whatever. But you'll have an email address. We'll mail things back and forth to you. Anyway, I brought that one up just to sort of throw in there a little bit of context of on the other side of this with, this is a little thing Jared threw together. It's not important. Or else it's key, but only because I am the one who used my super big brain to extract the information from them. But P.S., I'm sending my sister-in-law to work there. It's not sending her down there, but that's where I'm parking her. I thought that was a little weird. Kushner structured the operation, we're back in Forbes now, with a focus on maximizing their return for every dollar spent. We played Moneyball, see? There you go. Asking ourselves which states would get the best ROI for the electoral vote, Kushner said. I asked, how can we get Trump's message to that consumer for the least amount of cost? FEC filings through mid-October indicate the Trump campaign spent roughly half as much as the Clinton campaign did. And that was all true and out there. Of course, they were keeping more of their money because it was theirs. Okay, so lots of theories and how he used Trump's unorthodox style and how they targeted their advertising and micro-targeting and blah, blah, blah. But this piece isn't really likely to, I mean, it talks about some of the things that they did, some of the tools they used. Yeah, let's skip down to here. We weren't afraid to make changes. We weren't afraid to fail. We tried to do things very cheaply, very quickly, and if it wasn't working, we would kill it quickly, Kushner says. It meant making quick decisions, fixing things that were broken, and scaling things that worked. This wasn't a completely raw startup. Kushner's crew was able to tap into the Republican National Committee's data machine and had hired targeting partners like Cambridge Analytica to map the voter universes and identify which parts of the Trump platform mattered most. Trade, immigration, or change. Tools like Deep Root, ring a bell for anyone? Drove the scaled-back TV ad spending by identifying shows popular with specific voter blocks in specific regions. Say, NCIS for anti-Obamacare voters or The Walking Dead for people worried about immigration. Kushner built a custom geolocation tool that plotted the location density of about 20 voter types over a live Google Maps interface. Kushner built it, you think? Soon the data operation dictated every campaign decision. Travel, fundraising, advertising, rally locations, even the topics of speeches. He put together all the different pieces, said Pascal, and what's funny is the outside world was so obsessed about this little piece or that, they didn't pick up on what was being, that it was all being orchestrated so well. For fundraising, they turned to machine learning, installing digital marketing companies on a trading floor to make them compete for business. Really? Ineffective ads were killed in minutes while successful ones scaled. The campaign was sending more than 100,000 uniquely tweaked ads to targeted voters each day, including some that had Jewish stars all over them. Isn't that weird? And in the end, the richest person ever elected president, whose fundraising effort was rightly ridiculed at the beginning of the year, raised more than $250 million in 4 months, mostly from small donors. As the election barreled towards its finale, Kushner's system, with its high margins and up-to-the-minute voter data, provided both ample cash and the insight on where to spend it. When the campaign registered the fact that momentum in Michigan and Pennsylvania was turning Trump's way, Kushner unleashed tailored TV ads, last-minute rallies, and thousands of volunteers to knock on doors and make phone calls. Okay? All very interesting. I don't know for sure that Jared Kushner did not do this personally, right? He may be the data genius behind it all. Or he may not. But I can tell you this weekend, he turned from brilliant businessman wunderkind with the Midas touch into he's going to be executed for treason. This whole thing is going to collapse, and he can't say anything about it because it's Shabbat. What? Where's this opera? How come all of these people, this brilliant data opera, why wasn't Twitter abuzz with Jared Kushner as the second coming of Jesus? Why wasn't Twitter abuzz with the only savior you'll ever need? Trump, why, he's nothing compared to the genius of Kushner. Why, not even so much as setting Twitter abuzz with this trip abroad was a mild success. We couldn't even get that out there. Well, what's missing in all this? It's not the money. It's not the data machine. It's not the machine learning. It's not the bots. What do you have to do to turn on bots? What do you have to do to turn on micro-targeting? What do you have to do to get that to happen? I mean, they were able to get people out to the only poll that matters and pull the lever or mark the ballot for Trump through all of their data magic, but they can't make the Ipsos Reuters poll show more than 40% approval for the current president of the United States. How is this possible? Well, one thing that has changed, the data companies haven't gone away. The micro-targeting as a tactic hasn't gone away. The billions of dollars haven't gone away. The Mercers haven't gone away. Bannon hasn't gone away. Kushner hasn't gone away. Pascal hasn't gone away. The only difference is the Russians aren't as interested in anymore, and they're backing off because dangerous things are starting to happen. They've accomplished their mission. They're done with this stuff. They don't need to, they still, presumably you would think that they would want to push policy, but I guess they think that their human operatives can do that now. You don't need to make a policy of removing sanctions popular on Twitter, or so they thought, I guess. And maybe now they're realizing that's a mistake, but reactivating the system would now seem too suspicious. Everybody understands what's going on, and they would see what's happening. All of a sudden, Pepe the Frog reappears all over Twitter and wants sanctions lifted. Everyone would find that too obvious. They need a new strategy and a new way to enter back into the game, because while they're out, all of their kingpins are falling down. All the people who were so brilliant and were able to manipulate millions of voters with the snap of fingers, and who were successes and everything. Bannon, the political genius, who turned out to just be buying good PR for himself with Mercer money, now unable to do it. Kushner, the supposed data genius who made all this thing happen. Oh, and I was the one who came up with the idea of hiring Cambridge Analytica. You had to hire Cambridge Analytica. There was no other way about it. It was a Mercer operation. Bannon had a piece of it. Mercer's had a piece of it. And the whole point of getting rid of Corey Lewandowski, well, quote unquote, getting rid of Corey Lewandowski, and bringing in Bannon and Conway at Mercer's behest, so that they would hire on. And remember, the first couple of weeks of stories was about Bannon was the genius who brought in Cambridge Analytica. Now Kushner. No wonder they're stabbing one another in the back inside of the White House. They can't grab enough credit for one another. But I think the whole thing that's really astounding to me is, how could Jared Kushner have had such a terrible month and such a terrible weekend on top of this terrible month, where we're talking about really using that T word about what he was doing. And by the way, I'm a genius. I'm a computer data guy. I built this little thing. I built an exchange floor where people were actually competing to buy TV ads. That's how Moneyball I was and all this. And I put 100 people down in San Antonio to do all this micro-targeting because somebody gave me a Facebook tutorial, blah, 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 blah. I need to talk to Russia secretly without being detected. Wow. Well, that's a great thing. Or what an idea that is, Mr. Trump. You need to be able to talk and you need to delegate this to somebody. Who are you going to give it to? I'll give it to Jared, because he's such a computer genius. He's like maybe the only person I know who could put this sort of thing together. Wow, yeah. I mean, didn't he put together that awesome data operation, and he's micro-targeting? He built an exchange floor for bidding on TV ads. I mean, that's incredible. Who even thinks of such things? What's he going to do? What are you going to do, Jared? I'm going to go to the Russian embassy and I'm going to use their equipment. Yeah, why would data genius Jared, who built everything from scratch, turn to the Russians for their technology? And really, honestly, Russian technology, not really where you tend to go, like, should we use a Swiss watch to time this very important event? No, Russian. It doesn't happen that often, right? Now, Russia technology, it's not like they're helpless, obviously. But, I mean, now, maybe post-election, but I think even prior to the election, we all had this sense that, well, Russia and their hackers, they really are onto something. A lot of us didn't know exactly what their abilities were. And a lot of their use of technology, or even their hacking ability, seemed more benign than anything else. Like, they were mobsters trying to steal people's identity, yes. Trying to install malware through, various websites, or there was lots of Russian mobster investment in, Russian porn sites or whatever that would draw people in. And on the good side, on the white hat side, I guess there was Kaspersky, which didn't even occur to me was Russian per se until too late after the election. But, their data abilities really ran, not so much in the super technology hardware development side, but the software side. Anyway, I find it interesting that when he needed to evade detection, that somebody who was able to build the data operation that he claimed to be able to build and to understand micro-targeting in Facebook so inherently after just a short tutorial that he could not find a secure channel to talk to Russians except that which the Russians already had, which seems to me like more and more like maybe that wasn't his idea. Like maybe the Russians said maybe you can use our, I don't know, maybe Sergei Kislyak was lying about the being taken aback by Jared Kushner's suggestion that he used. So I don't know. We can't tell. Was it his idea? Was it Kislyak's idea? I'm not sure. But what's not explained here is why Mr. Data Communications Genius, who was able to engineer an entire election based on his understanding of communications, couldn't come up with a secure way of talking to the Russians. That doesn't even get to the question of why did you need a secure method of talking to the Russians? Certainly, that's an interesting thing about Syria, interesting cover story. That you would think you'd want to be more public, but perhaps not. But I think perhaps we've probably convinced ourselves that Syria was a cover story. Anyway, what it really was about was, can I talk to this bank without being detected? Because that is the one that'll get me in trouble if it's discovered, but which will save me and my family's butts. And the one thing I perhaps do have some hopes of really understanding, this stupid purchase of 666 Fifth Avenue, which was going to go down the toilet unless I could find some sucker to give me $4 billion. So we end up back on that. That's where we'll wrap up for the day before handing things off to the guys on the after show, that it all comes back to the stupid real estate deal, the worst purchase ever and the biggest debt ever for the least amount of return. Mr. ROI, Mr. Moneyball owns the biggest white elephant in Manhattan. How does that happen? Gee whiz. None of this seems to make any sense anymore. I can't figure out why the story being told by the Jared Kushner PR machine doesn't seem to hold up to any great amount of scrutiny. Not that I have given it a great amount of scrutiny. Yes, I've talked about it for an hour, but the scrutiny hasn't been that great. It's pretty surface stuff. He's stuck with the biggest white elephant ever, and no bank is going to touch it because they know it's garbage, and there's no reason to lend it to him. So what does he need? Chinese backing? That would help. But what would be even better? Russian backing. Why is Russian backing better? Because the Russians don't care. As we learned from the money laundering we explained early on in the Trump organization, the Russians don't care about return on investment. They're not looking for return on investment. They're looking to launder dollars. They don't mind making loans that don't bring in good ROI. They don't mind lending out money that doesn't come back to them, just so long as it comes out the other end as usable hard currency. So it had worked for Donald. I don't know that it would work in exactly the same way for Kushner in this, because there's not the same laundering operation necessarily available to them in covering gigantic balloon payments on one building. If they don't get an ownership stake in it, if there aren't things that they can sell off afterwards, they'd get some ownership stake. But they need real estate individually held that they can resell. But maybe they have a different goal in mind. And as it turns out, it's the lifting of sanctions seems to be worth a considerable amount more to them than just being able to launder a couple thousand or a couple $1 million here and there through condos. But that pipeline, always very lucrative to them, would open up again if they could just convince this guy, this moron, who has the other moron's ear. All you got to do, stroke of a pen, you can make this stuff go away. That seemed like a pretty good investment in itself. That's perhaps the only ROI they were ever interested in. Certainly weren't lending as a banking institution. Anyway, interesting stuff. We'll have to see how this develops over the next couple of days. We'll be back tomorrow. In the meantime, do stay tuned if you're listening here on Netroots Radio, and you should be, for the after show with Wink and Justice coming up next.
From Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Now, I've just been handed a note here. Jared Kushner is apparently handling our scheduling for the day, as well as my own note reading. The after show is off today for Memorial Day, and for good reason. But of course, they'll be having a special Netroots Radio Memorial Day mix coming up next. A little music selected for you by DJ Justice himself. Thanks, Jared.